Miracle is an interesting word. I heard it often as a hospital chaplain. When people receive heartbreaking news, they hope for a miracle, a completely unexpected healing that will erase the bad news they have received. That's the kind of thing I usually think of when I think of a miracle, something dramatic, something life or death. Merriam-Webster defines a miracle as an extraordinary event manifesting divine intervention in human affairs, an extremely outstanding or unusual event, thing, or accomplishment. So when I think of Jesus' first miracle, the changing of water into wine at a wedding, I can't help but wonder, why? The Gospel of John is convinced that this moment is the first sign Jesus gave of his divinity. Why is this moment, this kind of quiet miracle at a wedding, so important? There doesn't seem to be a matter of life or death at stake. So what if they run out of wine at the wedding? To understand the story, I had to go back over it in detail. And after doing that, I still have to tell you, I think this is one of the funniest stories in all of the Gospels. I'm not sure that was the original goal, but it remains true. I can't help but laugh every time. Mary, the mother of God, is a total mom. This whole story really is such a mom story. I can't help but think that Mary knows something that we don't here. They're at a wedding, and the wedding celebration could last a whole week in this culture. But on the third day, Mary notices that they have run out of wine. This would be sort of a failure of hospitality and would cause some shame to the family that was hosting the wedding. So she says to Jesus, "They have no wine." Can't you hear your own mom telling you something like this? This is such a mom move. They point out the problem, and even though they don't tell you what to do about it, you somehow know exactly what they want you to do about it. Hilary, I can't help but notice it's been a while since you've visited home. Hi, Mom, if you're watching. Jesus, I can't help but notice they ran out of wine. It's exactly the same. So Jesus' reaction is very relatable. He says, "Woman, what concern is that to you and me? My hour has not yet come." And just so you know, he's not being rude here. Woman is translated sort of oddly, but in Greek it really is a respectful turn of phrase. It really is more like saying ma'am. So he's not being snarky here, but he is sounding very much like a son who is put upon. This isn't about me. Well, Mary, in typical mom fashion, doesn't have anything to say to that. In fact, she doesn't say anything else to him for the rest of the story. Instead, in the original Greek, what she says when she turns to the servants is, "If he tells you to do something, do it." And then I just imagine her turning on her heel and strolling out with utter confidence that her son, of course, will do the right thing. And as funny as this is, I still wonder why Jesus chose to change his mind and intervene. Sure, running out of wine at a wedding would have been embarrassing and sort of shameful in this culture that valued hospitality so highly. But there was an opportunity here that both Mary and Jesus ultimately thought warranted a miracle, a miraculous sign of God's intervention. I think the opportunity has to be something bigger than the chance to save one family from embarrassment. In fact, what's standing out to me isn't the miracle itself, although it would be nice to have that ability to change water into wine. What's standing out to me is who witnesses it and how. I wonder what this whole experience was like for the people behind the scenes, for the servants. They, along with Jesus and Mary, are the main characters of the story. They're central to all the action. Mary talks to them directly. If he tells you to do anything, then do it. Jesus instructs the servants, fill these jars with water. That might sound like a simple instruction, but if you heard in the reading, these are huge jars. They're stone, and they can hold 20 or 30 gallons. So they are heavy. If they were all full of 30 gallons, we'd be looking at 180 gallons of water. This task would have been incredibly labor intensive. So even though he says, fill the jars up with water, and you just say it off the top of your cuff and it seems like nothing, this was a massive undertaking. They couldn't just turn on a faucet. This miracle probably meant someone had to haul all that water from another place, a pump or a well. This miracle actually meant hours of hard work for people. People worked hard to haul that water, to fill the jars. They knew it was water. They sweated carrying it around. And then when they took a sample to the steward for him to taste, and he declared it the finest wine, they knew something miraculous had happened. Somewhere in between those moments, something big occurred. That's what strikes me about this first miracle and what it says about how God moves in the world. Jesus calls on people to help create this moment. He doesn't just snap his fingers. And in fact, the people he calls on are the ones who we might normally miss or ignore in the story. Who sees the miracle happen? Not the bride, not the groom, not the taste testing chief steward, but the servants. The ones who are spending hours hauling water and filling jars. These are the first people who realized what happened. The people in the background just doing their job, serving drunk guests and hauling jars of water. They helped create this miracle. In fact, in order for this whole thing to happen, this group of people had to work incredibly hard. And I think this teaches us something about miracles and how God interacts with us in the world today. Just like Jesus did at this wedding, God is always seeking to include us in the work of making miracles happen. I might even go so far to say we have to participate for these things to happen. We're the servants of God. This is the work we are called to do. There are problems in the world that require miracles, places where we beg God to intervene in dramatic fashion. I think about sickness and war and famine, about the wildfires that are happening. Places where there's great suffering around us. And it's not enough just to ask God to provide a miracle for our sisters and brothers around the world. It's not enough to just stop after praying in our minds. We have to pray with our hands and our feet and our hearts and our checkbooks and our sweat to help make miracles happen. Sometimes God doesn't provide a miraculous cure. God provides a doctor with an idea. Sometimes God doesn't provide an end to a war. God provides people with the courage to speak truth and to work for peace. Sometimes God doesn't let manna fall from heaven. but instead calls on someone with abundance to share what they have. We must be these people. We must participate in the miracles that God creates, just as the servants participated in Christ's very first miracle at Cana. So today, as we're pondering this past year and looking forward to the next, going through all of our business at our annual meeting, there could be places where we can assist God in bringing miracles to our community, both within these walls and outside of them. And it will require some work, some hard work, some time and sweat and compassion. And we must listen carefully for the Spirit's instructions, because God is always trying to invite us into the great work of spreading love and hope and grace into our world. The servants listened to Jesus, they labored, and they saw a miracle happen. They were the only ones who saw a miracle happen. If we listen carefully to discover God's purpose for St. Anthony's, I wonder, what will the Spirit ask of us? I wonder, what miracles might we help create?